In the early 1800s, Spain commanded an empire so vast that the sun never set upon it. From the silver mines of Mexico to the golden coasts of South America, its colonies fed the Spanish crown with unimaginable wealth. And yet, within a few decades, almost all of it was gone. Revolution after revolution tore the empire apart until Spain was left with only a handful of islands. But how could one of history's greatest empires collapse so quickly? This is the story of Spain's lost colonies, and the century that changed the world forever. The dawn of the 19th century should have been the height of Spain's glory. For centuries, the riches of the New World had poured into Madrid. Vast armies marched under the Spanish flag, while the Catholic Church spread its faith across continents. But beneath the glitter of empire lay rot. Spain was weakened by endless wars in Europe, financial crises, and political instability. The Napoleonic Wars, in particular, struck like a thunderbolt. In 1808, Napoleon invaded Spain, plunging the nation into chaos. A puppet king sat on the throne, while guerrilla fighters battled for survival. Far across the Atlantic, Spain's colonies watched closely. If the homeland could not even defend itself, why should they remain loyal? Across the Americas, whispers of freedom grew louder. Enlightenment ideas, revolutionary movements, and local grievances blended into a storm Spain could not contain. It was in this fragile moment that the Spanish Empire began to unravel. The first sparks came in South America. Leaders like Simón Bolívar and José de San Martín, inspired by the American and French revolutions, ignited wars of independence. From Venezuela to Argentina, colonial armies clashed with Spanish loyalists. But danger was closing in. Spain, distracted by Napoleon's invasion at home, had little strength to send reinforcements. Colonial armies, often composed of indigenous peoples, mestizos, and freed slaves, rose against royalist garrisons. The wars were brutal, but the tide turned against Madrid. In Mexico, Father Miguel Hidalgo's famous Grito de Dolores in 1810 called for independence, sparking a decade-long struggle. By 1821, Mexico was free. In South America, Bolívar's victories in Colombia, Venezuela, Ecuador, and Peru shattered Spain's control. San Martín crossed the Andes with his army, liberating Chile and helping free Peru. What no one realized was these revolutions weren't just wars for independence. They were the death knell of Spain as global supremacy. By the mid-1820s, nearly all of Spain's mainland colonies in the Americas were gone. But Spain clung desperately to its remaining territories: Cuba, Puerto Rico, the Philippines, and Guam. For decades, these islands remained under Spanish rule. Yet change was inevitable. By the 1890s, nationalist movements erupted in Cuba and the Philippines. Spain tried to suppress them, but the cost was too great. Then came 1898. The Spanish-American War delivered the final blow. In a matter of months, Spain lost Cuba, Puerto Rico, Guam, and the Philippines to the United States. After centuries of empire, Spain's colonial world had vanished. The year 1898 was Spain's darkest reckoning. The explosion of the USS Maine in Havana Harbor sparked war with the United States. Spain, weakened and outdated, faced an industrial power hungry for expansion. Battles were swift and devastating. In Manila Bay, the U.S. Navy annihilated Spain's Pacific Fleet within hours. In Cuba, Spain's exhausted soldiers were overwhelmed by American troops and Cuban rebels. The empire that once terrorized Europe and the Americas could no longer defend its colonies. The Treaty of Paris ended the war. Spain surrendered its last great possessions: Cuba, Puerto Rico, the Philippines, and Guam. What had taken centuries to build was erased in less than a year. For Spain, it was humiliation. For the world, it marked a shift. America was rising, and Europe's old empires were fading. By the dawn of the 20th century, Spain was no longer a world power. Its vast empire had been reduced to fragments, its global influence eclipsed. Yet from this loss came reflection. Spanish intellectuals and artists turned inward, sparking a cultural renaissance that asked, what does it mean to be Spanish without an empire? For Latin America, independence opened the door to new nations, though not without turmoil. The revolutions freed millions from colonial rule, but also unleashed centuries of struggle to define identity, borders, and governance. Spain's fall was not simply a story of battles lost, but of an empire unprepared for the modern world. We are reminded that no empire, no matter how powerful, lasts forever. And so the Spanish Empire, once unrivaled, became a cautionary tale of ambition, resistance, and the inevitable march of history. Like, share, and subscribe for more forgotten stories. History hides darker secrets.